The Secretary-General of NATO flew to Poland straight from Washington, D.C., where he had spoken to US President Donald Trump.
There are difficult debates between Europe and America over trade and tariffs. And there are calls to revive ideas of European autonomy. Let me be absolutely clear. This is not the time to go it alone. Not for Europe or North America. The global security challenges are too great for any of us to face on our own.
The problem is that the European Union, after Donald Trump came to power, has decided to stand up to and get rid of America from the old continent. The first step here is to be the resolution on European defence adopted 2 weeks ago, according to which the old continent is to be independent from the United States. Anyone who wants to build a European defence system is building it without the United States, that is, outside the North Atlantic Alliance, meaning that it is an alternative to NATO. It is certainly not in the interests of the people of Europe. Polish President Duda cited his conversation with the NATO Secretary-General moments before departing for Italy. Of course, Article 5 on collective defence applies. There is no doubt whatsoever that if any attack occurred, and in particular if it was an attack on our country, on Poland, then the whole North Atlantic Alliance would stand in our defence. Interestingly, Donald Tusk, in front of the Secretary-General of NATO, has clearly changed his tune. We're also counting on you as the Secretary-General of NATO, of course our American allies, but also Europe, because we believe in these two pillars. They are essential to treat Poland as Poland deserves. But it is probably no secret to anyone that Prime Minister Tusk usually follows the trail of decisions made in Berlin-dominated Brussels. As far as Donald Tusk is concerned, this policy that he leads is a very transparent one. Namely, he follows step by step the policy of the European Union. If the United States and Trump's are an opponent for the EU, then they must be an opponent for Tusk, because Tusk owes his political career exclusively to the European Union, thanks to which, among other things, he is Prime Minister at the moment. Most likely, a political decision has been made in Germany and France and Brussels to create something called the European Defence Union, and Tusk is their political appointee. In return, Poland is supposed to sit quietly, not protest, and it is even supposed to support it. And Tusk is supporting it. Tusk is doing what his political patrons and sponsors expect. The stakes are very high, because according to a resolution passed by the European Parliament, the most important decisions on defence, today belonging to each member state, are to be made in Brussels, without the possibility of any opposition. We also have to make sure that the principle of unanimity is applied in the European Union at all times when it comes to security and defence decisions. I can't imagine that in the European Union there will be a departure from this principle, because from the point of view of guarding our interests too, this is of fundamental importance. According to Brussels' idea, everything would take place independently of the United States, the strongest country and the basis of NATO. This is a very risky game because our security over the past few decades has been based precisely on the Washington Treaty. Anyone who works for the destruction of this treaty threatens the security of our people. In the background are the announcements of the European Commission's continuing joint arms purchases, exclusively in Europe, of course, and with money borrowed from the EU. What some European countries are pursuing is a mortal threat to Poland. That's because they want to get rid of the Americans from Europe, primarily in the interests of their arms industry. The Germans want orders to go to Rheinmetall. The French want them to go to French companies. That's their interest, and I even understand it, because they are not threatened by Russia. Poland is the one being threatened. Joint purchases with loans are opposed by EU countries in the south, who do not like increasing defence spending, with loans that will increase their debt. The EU countries' defence spending plans published by Brussels show that US arms manufacturers have been excluded from them. Poland's Prime Minister, who bought a lot of military equipment from the United States during the United Right government, is not protesting. It is a certain commitment on the part of Donald Tusk that, among other things, he won the elections a year and a half ago thanks to the European Union, but in general this is a reflection of his policies. The characteristic feature of the policy of following step by step what he does, what he wants, the resolutions of Brussels, such as they are, whatever they are. Meanwhile, Donald Tusk's government boasted about another success, started while the United Right was still in power, with the long-awaited purchase of Borsuk infantry fighting vehicles after the change of power. The contract signed today by the Polish Minister of Defence for the new Borsuk floating combat infantry vehicles is another example of a wasted opportunity. the destruction of Polish armaments potential and lack of ambition. Our government prepared a contract for 1,400 new Borsuk floating combat infantry vehicles. They signed a contract for 111 units. This is a disaster. It seems that Donald Tusk, creating himself as a Polish statesman, is more like a modern-day King Midas these days. But so far, nothing he has touched has turned to gold. A dramatic rescue operation is underway at the Podbrodja trading ground in Lithuania. On Monday, the crew of an M88 Hercules vehicle went missing there during manoeuvres. The machine fell into a swamp and was literally sucked several meters below the surface. Despite media reports of the deaths of 4 American soldiers, the military has not confirmed the information. The fight against time, which is essentially up, continues. The crew was reported missing on Monday night. The vehicle was located yesterday afternoon, and work to extract it began almost 24 hours ago. This is a swamp that is connected to a lake. We need to do all the necessary work to stabilize the ground, pump out the water, and prepare the rescue site. This required a lot of additional resources just to organize access. Within 24 hours, a new road was built so that heavy equipment could arrive. The water level was also pumped out enough for earthworks to begin. The vehicle that sank is one such as this M88 Hercules technical security vehicle weighing nearly 70 tons. Built on an Abrams tank chassis, it is used to tow inoperable machines from the battlefield.
As our Secretary of Defense has said, we will not rest until our troops are found. You can see that it is technically a very difficult recovery situation. I want to thank the Lithuanian government, the authorities, and all that are out here helping in the recovery. Their support has been absolutely vital and essential to this, and we are so grateful. Lithuania is a model ally, and we are so grateful for their help.
It is unclear whether the emergency services have any chance of getting the soldiers out alive. It is also unclear whether the vehicle was able to remain sealed under the surface of the swamp. Polish soldiers with heavy equipment are heading to Lithuania to support the rescue operation. For us, their soldiers are like our soldiers, and for us it is important to get the vehicle out as quickly as possible and thus finish our work. But the location is complicated. There are many unknowns. The terrain is swampy, there is a lake nearby, and we don't know where the water has broken in. If it were easy, it would have been done already. According to unofficial information, the machine rests on the bottom of the swamp about 7 meters below the surface. The 4-man crew was from the US 3rd Infantry Division, serving in Lithuania as part of the rotational presence of US troops on NATO's eastern flank. There are many exercises, especially in Central Europe, where the scale of involvement of ground troops is very large. So unfortunately, from time to time, tragic events like this one in Lithuania occur. The training ground where the tragedy occurred is located about 15 kilometers from the border with Belarus. In the media space, there have already been suggestions that Russian services may have had their fingers in this matter. This information is so far denied by the Lithuanians and Americans themselves, but for the moment, everything points to an unfortunate accident.
Earlier today, at least 5 people were wounded in a stabbing in Amsterdam, Netherlands. 1 suspect was arrested. The stabbing happened near Dam Square in the central part of the Dutch city. Police cordoned off the area and multiple ambulances and a trauma helicopter responded. Local media reported that a city council meeting involving Amsterdam Mayor Femke Halsema was interrupted because of the stabbing. When asked about a possible motive, Amsterdam police spokesperson Guido Oostorm told the Associated Press it was too early to tell.
This afternoon there are multiple people stabbed by one person. They're wounded and they're brought to the hospital. The suspect in this is being arrested and also wounded. At this moment we're investigating what happened. 2
witnesses have come forward to describe the scene of today's tragic attack. I did not see very much. I brought a chair to the victim. When we got there, she was bent over with a knife in her back. It was not a pleasant sight.
Ja, klopt. Ik zat daar op het bankje te bellen.
I was sitting there on the bench, on the phone, and there at the end of the alley there was a girl. She yelled all at once, "Ow, ow!" And then the man ran away towards the dam. Finally, she just fell over. I went to have a look and see if everything is okay. An American tourist said, call the ambulance, call the ambulance. And then I asked what exactly was going on. The girl said, I'm pushed, I'm pushed. She had a knife about this size sticking out of her back. The area is a popular tourist destination, and visitors could still be seen on the top of the nearby Nieuwe Kerk, or New Church. Nearby public transportation has been halted. Police are urging more people who may have witnessed the stabbing to come forward with any images that could assist in the investigation. The U.S. president, just as he announced in his campaign, is fighting for the U.S. auto industry. Soon, 25% tariffs will take effect on all cars and light trucks that enter the U.S. Some countries have already announced retaliatory measures. This includes Canada. The European Union is watching, while the British and Japanese are hoping for more lenient treatment. This one signature by the American president is of great significance. Its consequences affect not only the local auto industry, but also the entire U.S. economy and global trade.
We're going to have very strong policing, and it's pretty easy to do. If parts are made in America and a car isn't, those parts are not going to be taxed or tariffed. And we'll have very strong policing as far as that's concerned.
This decision by the U.S. president to impose tariffs amounts to $100 billion in additional budget revenues annually. Above all, however, it protects current jobs and creates new ones, and boosts the U.S. economy, where many auto industry giants will move their factories.
But this is very exciting to me. This is the automobile industry, and this will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen. Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants that were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places. Now those plants largely have stopped, and they're moving them to our country.
Now others will lose. The tariffs are a blow to Europe's largest automakers, primarily Germany, but also Japan, South Korea, or China.
It's very hard to put the implications in numbers. But what we do know is that the European car manufacturing sector is already in a weak state. The numbers are not looking too good. So what now will happen with these announced tariffs is that there will be an additional pressure on European car manufacturers.
The tariffs will take effect on the 2nd of April, and for the time being, there is uncertainty on the stock markets, including in the U.S., and anticipation of the effects. The Americans are not ruling out exceptions for individual countries.
I think the interesting thing from a UK point of view is whether the Labour government can negotiate some sort of opt-out on the basis that UK-US trade is actually pretty balanced.
That's what Japan, among others, is counting on, with global giants like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan. We must consider what will serve Japan's national interests. We strongly ask the United States not to impose these tariffs on Japan. There are different options. We need to think about which is most effective and consider all options. The decision could also have consequences for Polish companies that produce car parts, but especially for countries such as Mexico, which is the largest exporter of cars to the U.S. Canada and the aforementioned Japan will also feel the consequences. Of European countries, Germany is the largest exporter. America is flooded with cars, often cheap cars, that are not made in the United States. And this results in the auto industry not creating jobs in the U.S. And Trump wants to prevent this. He already announced in his first term in talks with the heads of German car companies that he would like to do exactly that, so that these companies do not build factories in Mexico or Canada, but in the United States, because this creates jobs in the market there. U.S. President Donald Trump's increased tariffs that were set at 25% on steel and aluminum imports from the European Union have already been in effect since the 12th of March. In response, Brussels has imposed retaliatory tariffs on U.S. products worth $28 billion. A series of increases, as recently as last year, was started by Brussels, with tariffs on Chinese electric cars, which was met with a response from Beijing and a blow to the European food industry.